Sweeney here again, and today we bring you Ben Pate. He has managed around $10 million in Google AdWords spend and has done about roughly 150K in Facebook pay-per-click spend. So we brought him on today to kind of give us a better background in the history of Google AdWords, where it's gone and how it's changed through the years, and some of the changes that Facebook is likely to make as well. He's also going to show us, how we can get into AdWords. There's a lot of people right now that have maybe done Facebook ads but never done Google AdWords. And tell us a little bit more about retargeting. So Ben, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So just really quick, I kind of want to hear, your kind of brief, how did you get into Google AdWords? You've obviously done $10 million. That doesn't happen overnight. What direction did that go?
Yeah, definitely. So as probably a lot of people know, I've kind of my background and history are out there on webinars and things like that I've done. But basically, I got started in internet marketing in 2001, and I basically had the unique opportunity to essentially have a paid internship, and that was just web design, okay? Because that's all I really knew at the time. And I started working within this essentially a paid internship because literally all I knew how to do on the websites was change a picture and change a price in Dreamweaver, okay? But that was enough. So I started working for him, and basically I knew the company name, and at that point in time I was using MSN, and I was searching for his business name, and I couldn't find him anywhere. And so that was kind of the beginnings of my search engine marketing career. And at that point I started working on on-site changes. And at that time, I subscribed to a service called Inktomi, where what they would do is they would refresh. They actually handled the index for MSN, and you would pay a small monthly fee, and they would refresh the index every 48 hours. So if you made a change on the website, no later than 48 hours later, you would see how that change was reflected in the search engines. And so I just was making a lot of on-site changes. And what worked, what didn't, going back and forth. Okay, put this back, put this here, bold this keyword, doing those sort of things. And that was the beginning of my search engine marketing career, primarily SEO. And I did that for a while. That particular client went from not even tracking his sales to doing $50,000 a month within that first year of me working on it. So it was pretty amazing, and I kind of quickly realized that web design wasn't really where I wanted to put my focus. It was more on search engine marketing. I felt like that was in higher demand and required a bigger skill, so to speak, a different skill that wasn't so apparent, right? Like you can learn how to code, and there's books for that, but at this time there weren't really so many books for internet marketing. So in any event, I did SEO for a long time and was doing SEO for an ink and toner business. I built it up to $190,000 a month in sales strictly from organic traffic. And basically, the way that I really clinched the big contract with the owner of that company was that I was doing SEO for him, and just to the tune of like $500 a month. At this point, he was spending $100,000 a year approximately with Google. However, he was managing all that himself. Okay, I hadn't done any Google paid advertising yet, but I've always been good with numbers, and like for a long time, I've been digging into Google Analytics. And basically, what I did was in Google Analytics, not even Google AdWords. We had the accounts linked, and so I dug into the stats for Google AdWords, and I basically figured out that the previous month he actually lost $4,000 on what he was spending with Google AdWords. And I brought this to his attention, and I also showed him that the SEO that he had been doing had been increasing, and so what he did then was at first he increased the SEO. I think I was around $500 to $1,000 a month. Then he increased it to $2,500 per month, and then the very next month he stopped advertising on Google altogether. Okay, And so this was a big part of his business, at least for a while, for a long time, for a couple years he was doing this. And so I was like, really? Because at first he's like, oh, I'm just going to turn it down. And then it was, oh, I'm going to stop it completely. And so he was paying me more money, and I was just like kind of doing everything I possibly could for that money. And literally almost overnight, we replaced the revenue that he was getting with that paid traffic with organic traffic, whereas he was paying Google about, I think about 6,000 a day, roughly, 4 to 6,000. So it was around 100K a month. Basically replaced it with like a $2,500 SEO budget. So you know, I know that sounds like I'm talking about SEO, but that was actually, you know, my first step into the paid advertising. I also then started doing affiliate marketing campaigns, and like for DirecTV and some different things. And I had like, you know, I made some sales, also ClickBank. I made some sales, but I never really had great success because I wasn't able to properly measure where those sales were coming from. You know, the affiliate networks are much more sophisticated now than they once were, where they have the post-back pixels and the SIDs and the tracking and things of that nature, so you can kind of figure out where those sales came from. But I would just know, like, oh, I spent $50 on Google AdWords and I made a sale, but where did that sale come from, right? And that's what's key with Google AdWords, and for anybody and paid advertising in general, is you got to know where your sales are coming from, right? You got to be able to pinpoint it down to a keyword, down to an ad, and also know where your sales aren't coming from, right? So if you're spending a lot of money on certain keywords and they're not generating sales, then you want to cut those, or even channels. So the way that I got into, so I started dabbling. What was that?
The metrics and the analytics are a huge part, because you got to know directly where that spend is related to.
Exactly.
And it's interesting too that you got your start by noticing, hey, this guy's spending, you know, this guy actually lost money.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because I've always been big on stats, and we have a methodology that you know, some other people have probably heard: measure, analyze, optimize. And so it all begins with measuring, and you can't improve what's not being measured, right? And so I was always big on stats, and spent a lot of time in Google Analytics, primarily for SEO, and went in there and looked at the AdWords stuff and saw that, hey, ran the numbers, you know, this isn't looking good. So I was also then had started dabbling with the affiliate campaigns, and basically, you know, I was doing a little bit of AdWords, and I've always been good with numbers, and you know, just kind of took to it really well. And then I ended up getting a referral from a local agency that basically referred me a client. Actually worked under their brand. They outsourced it to me though, and this company was spending $100,000 a month with Google. So initially, I kind of, you know, was like, whoa, you know, this is a lot different than what I've been doing. At least so I thought. The budget was different. However, what I quickly realized is that working with the larger clients and the larger budgets were actually much easier than the lower budgets, right? Where you've got clients and, oh, they're spending $1,000 a month, and a lot of times, you know, like they kind of treat it like as if it's a gamble, where like, you know, they're putting all their money on red, and they're, you know, and they're spinning the roulette wheel and hoping that it pays out, because if it doesn't, that their business is going to be sunk, right? And so that's a really bad feeling, and just, you know, I found that those low dollar clients needed a lot more maintenance, a lot more hand holding, whereas the people that were either, you know, used to spending those bigger dollars or just more savvy with marketing and advertising, they understood that it's a process, and you know, that it's an investment, and that you know, and it's not necessarily just, you know, hey, we're going to try this for a month, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, then we're going to stop, right? That you have to tweak things, right? That's where that analyze comes into play. You got the measuring set up, then you've got to analyze, okay? But the third portion, the optimize, see, you know, it's not enough to just look at the numbers, right? Like I could have just looked at Google Analytics and saw that he was doing really bad, and just kind of kept that in my head, right? paralysis by analysis happens with a lot of people, right? You're looking at all these numbers and, well, what do I do with this, right? And that's like analyzing without the optimizing is kind of like having an idea without actually executing it, right? Like, oh, I've got this great idea, but it's only an idea until you actually do something with it, and that's where the optimize comes into play. The analyzing is crunching the numbers, figuring out what's working and what's not. The optimize is scaling what's working and cutting or reducing what's not. So that's how I basically started working with this client, and was very successful with them, and just realized that I continued to like it more and more. And basically, I've been doing SEO for 10 plus years, and it's always been a moving target, but I think that more recently with all the different Penguin, Panda, all these updates that Google does, that these are things that help push people towards the paid, and Google knows this, right? The more volatile they can make the SEO, the more people are going to want to move towards the paid, something that's a little bit more consistent. So I basically got that somewhat whale of a client, and kind of freaked out at first and realized, like, hey, this is actually easier, and hey, you know what? I actually like this a lot better than SEO, because I like to call it, it's like with AdWords and paid traffic, it's almost like perfect information, okay, where you have all the information, and then with the click of a button, I can lower my cost per click. With the click of a button, I can say, advertise to this state, or lower my bids in this state, or increase my bids in this state, or increase or decrease my bids during these certain times of day, because I'm seeing that they're not working as well. And so that's really the part that I really like about it is like, it's almost like an audio technician, which, I used to always be really involved in like car audio and things of that nature. And with AdWords, it's kind of like that, right? You've got your soundboard, and you're tweaking all these dials, and once you tweak that dial, just like that soundboard, the change happens almost immediately. Whereas, like with SEO, like the analogy we would always give with people, it's like planting a seed, and you got to keep watering it and wait for it to grow, and then hopefully it grows up into a tree one day. In terms of kind of moving on from there, worked with that one client. I basically kind of did such a good job that I worked myself out of a job with them. They took over the account because I didn't set it up on my own, because I took over theirs. They then bought a new business and had me work on that company for a while. And really just kind of since then, just kind of really have honed in on my niche of paid traffic, and primarily AdWords and search, but I've also a couple years ago really killed it in the display network with actually MySpace. And the main reason was that I was able to kill it is I was working in the anti-aging niche, testosterone, human growth hormone, things of this nature, and the target age group was like men age 45 to 54. Okay, and so MySpace actually would allow you to target people based upon those demographics, which there was a couple sites like Plenty of Fish that would allow you to do that, and I also hit that up. But Google is much more evolved now on the demographic side than they were then. However, Facebook, of course, like that's primarily how you're targeting people, is through demographics. What age groups? What are their interests? What are they likes? Do they have children or don't they have children? Are they single? Male, female? All these different things. And so, so then of course moving over to Facebook traffic, very similar to display network. And for me, it's still all about stats. It's a little bit different. It's all about still measure, analyze, optimize, and so that's kind of how it's kind of a brief history of kind of how I got into paid traffic and some of the reasons why I continue to focus on this industry.
Got you. So that leads me to a few different questions and a few things we've discussed, and one thing we're gonna probably get into a little bit afterwards because I think it'll be a good segue into Facebook ads. But first, I want to kind of focus on, you did land this big client, but obviously there's a learning process along the way. So I want you to give us an idea for someone who's looking to get into Google AdWords, some of, maybe the top 5 things they need to pay attention to or mistakes that are commonly made. And
Okay.
someone who, you mentioned this measure, analyze, optimize, and, I think that's a great way for someone to kind of visualize it, but I still think there's a bit more as far as, maybe the ad creative or the compliancy and, how would they go about these kind of things, and even targeting, for example. So kind of give us your basic rundown or your beginner's checklist to getting started with AdWords.
Yeah, definitely. And by all means, I mean, the measure, analyze, optimize, what's really good about it is that it's very high level, but it's kind of like a guide. Like, okay, does this fit into measure? Does this fit into analyze, or does this fit into optimize? But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's very high level, and it's more so a guide as to getting set up properly, and then what do you do, and then ultimately the whole system just continues to repeat. Once you have the measure set up, really the analyze and optimize are what just continue to repeat. But in terms of getting set up, what I would say is that basically there's mainly like 2 forms of marketing, right? Inbound and outbound. Okay, and so for us and Web 1 and we've had great success with inbound marketing. Okay, and so what's involved with inbound marketing are going to events, going to trade shows, meeting people, letting people just know what it is that you do. I tell you what, I mean, even to this day, that for the most part, whenever I tell almost anyone locally what I do, either them themselves or they know somebody that wants to talk to me, okay, that wants to talk about search engine marketing and how to, oh, I've got this business idea, or I've got this business, well, what should I do to get up on Google, and things of that nature. So, obviously we're in very virtual sense, right? Like you and I right now, like we're meeting over the interwebs, right? We're in 2 different locations, and that actually makes things a lot easier. But you got to get out and let people know what it is that you do, because if your local friends and your family and things of that nature, if they don't know what it is that you do, then they're not going to be able to refer you business. And that's been a huge portion of our business, is through referrals. So I had mentioned that that whale of a client I got through a referral through a local agency, and I also work with other agencies. So, and these agencies are larger than our company, right? Where back then, if we only maybe had a couple employees, they might have had 20. Okay, so but the main thing is that they knew that if they got a client that dealt with SEO or pay-per-click search engine marketing, that unless it was just something real small time that they thought they could just kind of, oh, we're going to change a couple meta tags and do some on-site work and things of that nature, that basically they knew that, like, okay, let's call Ben, let's bring in the big guns to handle this account. And so inbound marketing is something that I think a lot of people, I think the successful people understand it and do it, but the chamber is something that's probably pretty obvious with a lot of people. You can go to chamber events and not become a member, and just to check it out, and you can kind of get in and meet some people. But get out and meet people. Get out and meet people that are doing things that are complementary to you, right? Where maybe you're working with a design firm, and that they just do design. And okay, hey, if you find somebody that they need search engine marketing or paid advertising, then send them my way. And then of course, then you send your clients, your design clients, to them, right? One hand washes the other. So these relationships are really key. That that you're building these relationships. Also, too, any communities that you're a part of. For example, if you go to church, right? I mean, that's a huge community. Get out in your community, whatever it may be. Let people know what it is that you do. Represent yourself accordingly, and just make sure that they know that you're an expert, right? So that's inbound stuff. In terms of outbound stuff, that gets a lot more difficult because when somebody refers you business, your conversion rate goes up dramatically. Okay, I mean, I almost don't know of anybody that's referred business that we haven't been able to strike a deal with that it didn't have to do with price, right? That's the only time I've ever gotten referred business that it didn't work out was because they're like, man, we want to use you, but we were hoping for a couple $100 a month, and you're a couple thousand. So outbound's a lot trickier, right? You're essentially potentially contacting people while they're doing something else, right? Almost like interrupt marketing, and and then you got to prove yourself, right? They're like, well, why do I care who you are? Things of that nature. So inbound and outbound are basically the two main forms of marketing. But also too, in terms of some pitfalls, that the referrals worked really great. However, one of the big mistakes that we made that literally almost caused us to close up shop was that instead of companies referring business to us and our company, where we maintain the client relationship, we basically were like their outsource team, okay? And what basically happened is that they built up their reputation on somewhat of our backs. I mean, granted, at the same time, we were making good money, but then unfortunately, with a couple of people that at different times, that the work just dried up because they looked at it and go, okay, well, we're sending Web 1 $20 grand a month, and we can hire a couple people and train them in-house and pay them a quarter of that or a third of that, whatever. And they basically decided to take it in-house. So when they once said no, we don't want to handle this, we don't want to do this, that's why we want to work with you, that then kind of the greed takes over, and either that or then they look at it as an expense.
When it's one contract, it's no big deal. But then when the contracts start piling up, and as you said, when they see that they have to write this check to Web1 for 20 grand every month, that's when it changes. And it's an economics of scale thing. They're almost in the same way that any smart business owner does. They're piggybacking off of you until it gets to a point where, okay, now it makes sense for us to hire a guy full time and have two guys, and we pay him whatever, 10,000 combined, and now we can pocket the rest.
Yep.
But in the same vertical, or in the same sense, you guys need to watch out for your backs. So I'm interested, because I know you mentioned too about losing the first big whale client. So what did you guys do to prevent that situation, or prevent losing them?
Yeah, so a couple different things to prevent it. In terms of paid advertising, the main one that larger agencies pretty much always do is that they own the account. And in the language of the contract, that is their those are their trade secrets, right? How they set up the structure of the account, how the campaigns are set up, the ads, all these different things that they view it as their trade secrets. And so the person that they're working with the client doesn't own the account. So the agency owns the account, the agency pays Google, and the client pays the agency. And that's probably the biggest way of protecting yourself in paid advertising is that you own the campaigns, not the client. The other thing to protect yourself is with contracts. So I was on vacation once, and actually one of the agencies that I work with, he had a client contact him, and actually it was in regards to what turned into a lead generation deal. And the reason I say it turned into a lead generation deal was that he was talking to this guy who a family member worked for this company. And at first it was like, hey, I want a website and I want search engine marketing, I want this, I want that, and then they said, okay, here's the price. So that price was too much, and they ended up working out a lead gen deal. Well, when we were figuring out what's the price for the services contract, I was actually on vacation. The owner called me and was like, hey, I got this thing. So I worked on it for a couple hours on vacation, sent him over the proposals and things of that nature, and basically then the deal didn't go through. Well, later on I found out that deal didn't go through, but then they struck a lead gen deal. And so I kind of had like a bitter taste in my mouth about it, and I talked to him, and so basically what I did was I said, look, if any client that I get involved with, that for one, that I stay with that client, okay? And then two, if, like in this last case, if the deal changes, like give me first right of refusal, okay? And actually that brings up another thing in terms of first right of refusal that I wanted to mention, is that I recently had a client who sold their company to another company, okay? And literally just last week I have been communicating with this company, and I know that they haven't been doing very well, and I've been communicating with them every day about it. And I literally just got a phone call from the new owner, and they said, hi, I thought it was a solicitation call. Hi, we just acquired XYZ company. And, and ultimately, the old company put in the good word for me, and it looks like I'm going to continue on with them, and that the old company is still a part of the whole thing. And so, like, I'm not necessarily out completely, but it was a big shock and a big surprise. And so one of the things that I'm going to be adding to our contract is first right of refusal on the sale of the company. So that's another way, right, that we could have protected ourselves, that if they're like, hey, this isn't working out, we want to sell the company, that maybe if we had the opportunity to buy the company for, I don't even know what they paid for the company, but if it's, hey, if it was 50 grand and that would have made sense to us, well, give us first right of refusal. So that's something that we're going to be adding to the contract.
Do you think that people are going to go for that? As far as when it comes to the sale of the company, they'll be okay with that term? Or
I believe so. It's basically that, hey, like, I've got this deal, I can sell my company to this other company for $100K, but you've got this first right of refusal. Do you want to buy it for $100K? Mm-hmm. Right? Essentially, will you take the same offer? So I think that they should, and I don't think that most companies will think, unless they see a clear a planned exit strategy in the near future, that they should have a problem with it, because they should probably see it as like, oh, we're not planning on selling the company, so this, that, or the other. And actually, the last time that issue came up, we were working with this local bar, and this guy was working on our contract, and he's tends to do these lengthy contracts, and actually that was something that he had brought up, that because the other thing is like, what if they owe you money and then they sell the company, right? They owe you money, they sell the company, now it's, well, who do I collect from?
Yeah.
There's all this confusion, and so he wanted to throw that in the contract then, and I'm like, no, and we ended up doing a completely different contract. But now after this happened, that now that's something that I want to add in. So if you own the account, right, that's one thing, owning the account, owning the campaigns, right, those are your trade secrets, and then also the contract. So what we do with our contracts now is we have a 12-month term with a 3-month out. So basically, if they're not happy after 3 months, we can part ways and no hard feelings. Otherwise, if they go past 90 days, essentially, now we're in for 12 months. But you got to have contracts, because if you ever sell your company, then those contracts need to be assignable to the company that you sell it to. and it just helps you to be able to predict, the cash flow that you're going to have, right? So you're not, constantly doing this. Like the month to month, by all means, if you're using that as a USP, and winning clients with that because the rest of the industry is having long contracts, then hey, that's something that you got to weigh. But by definitely locking them into a contract, giving them a 3-month, giving them a way to get out if they're not happy, making it easy for them to get out, at a reasonable time. But that, and then in terms of the outsourcing, you just got to be really careful when you're outsourcing, that because you don't own the relationship, that as that business builds, that you don't get caught, with your pants down, where all of a sudden then they take it in house. Now, obviously, then you could even have a contract with those relationships as well, similar to like what I had with the agency, where like, hey, we're going to be the exclusive provider for this client as long as we continue to get the results, right? Like that's what I set up with the other one when they went to the lead gen deal that I worked on vacation with. That like if we get involved with the client, stay with the client. The other things too that I want to mention with that is that some other things that in terms of things to avoid is that when you win business, so in terms of contracts, all of the negotiation power usually happens in the beginning, right? Once you start getting down the road, like you've lost a lot of leverage, right? So when they want to strike that deal with you, that's when you got to apply that leverage. That's when you need to go for these things. And you can always go for it, and then okay, we'll take that out, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. I had let's see, one of the deals where one of these agencies that I was working with, similar type thing where I said, hey, they wanted me to come in and start doing an SEO audit and a pay-per-click for this company. And at the time, I was pushing for saying, hey, I want a piece of what comes in from this client, because like let's say for example, right, you've got a company and you do design, okay? You don't do SEO, you don't do pay-per-click. You happen to find out about this company that wants SEO and pay-per-click, right? But you know me. So you say, hey, Ben, can you, do this work for this company? And so from my point of view, like, because that's all that client wanted at that time, while yes, I wouldn't have the opportunity if you hadn't presented it to me, but then also you wouldn't have had the opportunity to work with that company if you didn't know me or somebody like me to do the SEO and pay-per-click, right? So at the time, I said, hey, I want, like, if this client does $100,000 in design work, that I want like a little piece of it because it all started with the work that I did, right? So they're like, well, it's like laying the golden goose or whatever, yada yada, and ultimately I caved on it, okay? And that's why I said that when you're signing the contract, when that deal is beginning, that's when you have the negotiation power, right? So they wanted me to do the pay-per-click. I ended up doing that, and I caved on the percentage. Well, this particular agency, through that relationship that was formed and started with me and the work that I did, representing their brand, they ended up closing, I think, like a $1.5 million contract to basically like rebrand and like redo everything for this organization that I wasn't a part of, that I didn't get anything from. But the entire relationship started with me.
Gotcha. Yeah. So they, however much they were spending on AdWords, they were happy with, they're happy with the clients and what they're doing for them. Meanwhile, you're the one who's doing all the work and doesn't get credit for it, basically, and then also you didn't get any cut on that. What
it was is that the client initially was only about like SEO and pay-per-click, okay, and so I did all that. Representing their brand. Later on, because this company's strength was in design, and somewhat development, that they ended up scoring a huge deal on design and development, and probably ultimately because they already had that existing relationship in place. So, I was there representing their brand, and doing a good job, right? Because obviously, like, if they're knowing of this company, this agency was, yeah, we hired them to do pay-per-click, and it didn't go so well, that then, any of the other work, the design work, like, that would have been somewhat tarnished. So anyways, the point being is that I was pushing for, like, hey, I want like a little piece of the future business that comes from this client, whether it's pay-per-click, SEO, or design work or web development work, because I'm like essentially the lead for this client. At least I was at that time. But I caved on that, and then they ended up getting a huge contract as a result, and so naturally I didn't share in any of that. So, once again, I mean, I've been doing this for a while, and there's definitely things that have happened like that, where like lessons learned, and so I'm happy to try to put myself out there and my failures, to try to help other people.
Now, so I have a question in the same kind of vein, is that when you're doing these things, so some of these agencies, for example, that don't do much pay-per-click work, and they hire you, and they kind of white label your services, maybe we'll call it that. Have you in your experience feel like you should do the same thing, or should you just kind of have a standard referral contract, or should you just kind of have a good faith contract? So the first example would be if someone, say they want design work from you, would you go out and hire another company and just kind of put a little on the top for yourself? Would you approach this other company and say, hey, I'll hand you this work, but I want 10%? Or would you go the third option, which is more of, I'm going to give you this piece of business, and you'll give me business in the future? What have you seen success-wise as far as that? Because I know going the agency route can be a bit more complicated when you're white labeling other people, and then you're still dealing with client relations, and you're dealing with their work, and you're kind of project managing it.
Yeah.
So what have you seen work the best?
Well, I mean, for example, like now, I've had some recent referrals, and that's a good way to put it too, like white labeling. That's like what we used to do, right? Where they're outsourcing it to us, and but the other difference is that so I've worked in 3 different capacities, right? One capacity is to the client. I work for that company, and I communicate with that client. Okay, so they know Ben Pate, and they know that brand, and I'm working underneath that brand. The other way is that the client is under another brand, and they don't know Ben Pate, right? I don't communicate with the client under their brand. They don't even know me. The agency handles all that, and so they don't know Ben Pate. So they're like essentially outsourcing it, like they don't even know us. Then the third way is a referral, right? Where they know Web 1, they know Ben Pate, and they pay Web 1, okay? And that third way is pretty much kind of the only way that we'll do it now, because I've had some recent people come in and, hey, we've got these deals, and I've said, hey, the only way that I'll do it is I'll pay you a commission, but that they're going to pay Web 1, and and we're going to handle it so that they know us and our company. And the reason that that's really important is that actually this company that I just talked about that was sold, that was actually a referral from another company. And remember, I said referral, right? So I told him he focused more on design and sales stuff. That I said that I've got to maintain the relationship for the PPC stuff. They're going to pay Web 1. They're going to know me, right? So why that was really important was that when I was in this meeting that I had this week with this new company and the old company and talking about how we're going to be moving forward, that I had mentioned this other person and some things that he was working on that kind of weren't finished, that I was saying like, hey, my colleague was working on this, and this might kind of give us a little jump start on the CRM portion, right? He's working on a Salesforce integration, and basically then I was kind of informed that he had kind of done some things recently that they weren't really happy about. Okay, so if I was working under his brand, then I probably would have been out too, right? Like it's a group package, right? So I would have been out. But because I was working under my own brand, and because they were very happy with me and the communication that I was giving them, and the work product, that that was what was able to continue working with the client.
Now, out of curiosity, when you do these referrals, what do the percentages typically look like? So what do you give someone? What do you ask for someone? So if a design firm hands you a PPC client, what are you asking for in return? If you hand them a design client, what are you asking for in return?
Yep. So recently we've kind of modified this. So I'm usually pretty generous, because I'm like, hey, send us the business, right? Like I love paying affiliates. Even though it's a big chunk of money, it's kind of like we wouldn't have these sales if it weren't for you. So I wanna pay it back. So that particular referral deal that I talked about just a second ago, with that the company was sold. Basically, the guy that brought me in, and he actually pre-sold me, and I'm going to talk more about that in a second and of how we've changed it. But he basically pre-sold me. I basically just came in and kind of shook some hands and smiled, and then they started paying Web 1, right? He kind of did a lot of the work. And so I paid him 20% recurring, okay? So every month he was getting a check for like $2,000, and he was happy. He brought us in. Generally speaking, those types of deals, once again, like when you're putting in the contract and you've got the power to negotiate in the beginning, right? So what you could do on those to protect yourself is you can put like an annual term on there, right? That it's a 12-month term, like just like how that other agency didn't want to pay me for future revenues and the golden goose. That you can kind of take that information and reverse it for when you're going to pay someone else a commission. So okay, I'll pay you 20% for the next year, so that like it's not in perpetuity forever, right? And once again, throw these things out in the contracts, and if they don't like it and complain, then say, hey, okay, we can increase that to 2 years. Oh, well, no, I want it forever. And you can push back, and say, okay, fine, we'll take it out altogether, right? So that was a 20% deal. I was pre-sold, and he was also doing a lot of work with this client at the same time. So the other way is where it's a referral, but then I've got to go in and sell it, right? So you basically just flip me a lead. Yeah, exactly. You go, here's a lead, and then I've got to go in and do all the heavy lifting of selling it, the proposals, the contracts, everything. And to where what we're doing is we're shifting that to where it's more like a finder's fee, right? Like I'll give you a finder's fee now. And these things can all be negotiated, but you can say, hey, we'll give you, 25% of the first month. Or, you know what I mean? You can go, we'll give you 50% of the first month, which generally those work well because they kind of make a bigger hit, but only in the beginning, and that gives them motivation to get out there and sell more and give you more referrals, right? Whereas like the ongoing commissions, right? We all love that stuff, but go for, say, hey, I'm going to be maintaining the relationship. You're essentially flipping me a lead, and then you're out. And now I've got to do all the rest of the work. So the compensation or the commission there needs to be appropriate. So I can say like, hey, I'll give you, 5 or 10% over, the next year of that contract, or I'll pay you. You could either do a fixed rate of I'll pay you $2,000, or I'll pay you 50% of the first month. Whatever the case is, that it's a different deal when they're just flipping you a lead versus they're going to be actively working with this client and kind of helping with some of the communication, and they also brought you in and pre-sold you. So you just kind of come in and he's the guy, and everything's very easy.
Gotcha. So the difference between a warm lead, a very warm lead, and a kind of cold lead. So that definitely makes a lot of sense. Now I do kind of want to backtrack a little bit because we focus more on the client-based side, contracts, and how to deal with everything. But as far as Google AdWords itself, as you've mentioned, Facebook is more interruption marketing, and there's a stronger focus on demographics, whereas obviously Google AdWords is more keyword-based.
Yep.
So I'm wondering, as far as ad copy practices or landing pages, someone who is looking to get into Google AdWords that maybe hasn't done much. Is there anything they should be focusing on, what they should be looking for and paying attention to? For example, maybe they need to just go desktop-based and not do mobile at all in the beginning, or things of that nature.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, actually that's a great one, desktop-based, right? A lot of times, at least right now, although PayPal's made some huge strides in mobile, and it's actually really easy to buy stuff through PayPal on mobile now. It's really quick and easy. So, but yeah, definitely mobile is something that we recommend generally turning off in the beginning, only running to desktops, and a big reason of that is that we see that, especially if you're trying to get someone to make a sale on your website, that it's kind of cumbersome to type out your information. You might be on the go, right? Like when I'm at my desktop, like I'm sitting at my desk, right? I've got my phone, I've got my wallet, I can get out my credit card, no problem. Whereas when you're on your mobile phone, you might be in your car, hopefully at a stoplight, looking at it, right? Or in a restaurant, or walking somewhere between classes, or whatever. That like
not even be connected to Wi-Fi.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You could be out on a smoke break, whatever, right? And you're on your mobile phone. Now, and this is something that Google that they've really made some great strides in recently, is that they're trying to not be like so focused on the device, and trying to like say like that, like, yeah, you might not be you might be a little less inclined to make a purchase on your mobile phone, but you might start that purchase on your mobile phone and then ultimately go to your desktop to complete that purchase, or to, oh, here's that website, and then go and do it. And so they've made some great strides. That's why the enhanced campaigns, why they made that change. But right off the bat, and the other thing is that I just want to preface it with that, every niche is different. Are you asking for a sale? Are you asking for a lead? Are you, is it a one-click download? Like, what is it? What is the action that you're trying to get someone to take? And depending upon that action, could determine whether or not mobile's a good fit. For example, if you're trying to drive phone calls, then you probably want to be on mobile, right?
Yeah.
Because you can click the call, boom, and that's something that you can do very easily on a mobile phone. So, that's why I don't really like blanket statements. But yeah, generally, like if e-commerce, for example, like more than likely you probably want to turn mobile off. If you're looking to drive phone calls, then you may turn desktop down and kind of focus more on mobile. In terms of some other things, what I would recommend is starting small and only building with what you can kind of handle. So a big mistake that a lot of people make is they get in there with the keyword planner, they add in all these keywords, and maybe they only create one ad, and there's just too much going on. They're too new, and really what they need to do is have fewer keywords, have more ad groups. Okay, so more ad groups is where the keywords and the ads reside. And so a big mistake that we see a lot of people make is they have one campaign, one ad group, and a bunch of keywords. Okay, so that means all those keywords are being served up. That those ads are being served up by many different keywords. Okay, and so you want it to be very tailored, very specific. So you could have one campaign, but generally the campaigns mimic the categories on the website. Okay, so these could be like different sections of the website. So maybe let's say if it's real estate, where commercial real estate could be one campaign, residential could be another, land could be another campaign, leases or rentals could be another campaign, right? Those would generally be maybe like different categories. Also, too, at the campaign level is where you set the geolocation. So, am I advertising to the entire United States, or am I advertising just to Florida? So, so that's something too. So you want to have roughly 5 to 10 keywords per ad group, and let's say 5 to 10 ad groups per campaign. So, for example, if like I just had a meeting right before you left. This guy runs a kids summer camp in Jupiter, and he asked me, he's like, "Oh, we're basically turning on a campaign that we had ran in the past." So he had asked me, he's like, "Oh, are we doing like outdoor and summer camp and kids camp and all these different kind of like little play on words, right? It's all kind of the similar type of meaning. I mean, it shows a little bit different intent, right? Mm-hmm. Where kids summer camp is pretty broad, right? We don't know, like, well, what kind of summer camp are they looking for? Is it a equestrian summer camp? Is it an adventure summer camp? Is it a science summer camp? And so these are the perfect examples of different ad groups, right? So we have an ad group for kids summer camp, equestrian summer camp, adventure summer camp, snorkel camp. That's actually what it is. It's a snorkeling camp. Any sort of like water-related camp. And you basically kind of go from broad to more specific, and that happens at the ad group level. And what that does is that allows you to have a targeted keyword and a targeted ad, for that combination, right? So that if the keyword is adventure summer camp, that our ad resembles that. So our ad is adventure summer camp, and because it's at the ad group level that the keyword and the ad reside, that you have to have many different ad groups. If you kind of think of it like a tree, think of like the trunk as the campaign, and then think about the branches as ad groups, and then the leaves could be like keywords and ads. Okay, so if you had a tree with a trunk, with one offshoot, right, that would look really weird. Yeah. So you want, the trunk is the campaign. The branches coming off are the ad groups. The leaves would be all the keywords and ads that you need to have. It needs to kind of look like that in order to be successful. And what that will do primarily is that not only is it going to make it more relevant, but then it's also going to increase your click-through rate. And click-through rate is a big piece of the pie when it comes to Google's secret sauce, which is essentially quality score. And I don't want to talk about, getting to the technical of quality score too much, but essentially it's Google's secret sauce. The higher your quality score, the lower your cost per click is going to be in a higher position. So it's the higher quality score that allows you to pay less per click than your competitor when you're in the number 1 position and your competitor is in the number 3 position. The main piece of that is click-through rate. So if you have a higher click-through rate than your competitor, then more than likely then your quality score is going to be higher. Google is going to give you somewhat preferential treatment. The reason for that is that I have 2 golden rules for Google AdWords, right? So the first golden rule is whatever makes Google the most money, okay, wins. And by that I mean like, with the ads and your competitors, right? It's an auction model, and so naturally they want to make the most from their auction, right? So whatever makes Google the most money, and then whatever provides the best user experience. And the reason why number 2 is really important, I mean, you see a lot of talk about Google being very focused on the users, right? And what's really interesting is that Google has a different mission statement than pretty much any other website out there. Okay, so every other website out there, you want people to stick on your website, right? You want people to be on your website for a very long time. Google is the opposite. They want people to be on their website for a very short period of time, okay? And when somebody, which is essentially they click through to, whether it's an organic listing or a paid listing, they click through to another website. Well, then what Google wants to see is that that person stays on your website. They view that as, okay, they like this. Because when somebody clicks on your website and they click the back button, that's called a bounce. And Google can see that oh, they just came back, they went to this website and they just came back in 1 second. That, okay, something must not have been in sync. The website didn't work. It wasn't what they expected. It provided a bad user experience. And so the reason that that's number 2 is that will indirectly affect the number 1 golden rule, is whichever makes Google the most money, because when people go to Google, if they're not getting the answers that they feel are appropriate for what they're searching for, then they're not going to come back to Google. They're going to go somewhere else. So those are the 2 golden rules. The click-through rate's very important. Also, too, making sure that the match types of the keywords are very important. A lot of people, they'll just type in the keyword just on its own, and that would be considered a broad match keyword. And so Google will match anything that it thinks is relevant. So for quick example on that, we were doing a lot of work in the flood restoration industry. Okay, and so one of the keywords is water damage. Well, what we quickly found was that a lot of people were searching on iPhone water damage. And cell phone water damage.
My mind too. It's funny.
Yeah. And where like people are looking for like that rice trick, right? Yeah. So, so the way that you combat those is either with exact match keywords, where only what you type in, what you do is you put brackets around the keyword. If you use exact match, then you don't need negative match. But the way to combat that is with negative match keywords. And so basically what you want to do is let's say you had a broad match for water damage. It's gonna show your ad for anything it thinks relevant. So iPhone water damage, they show your ad. Well, what you do is you go in there and you run a search term report, and you can see the exact keywords that people searched that generated impressions for your ads. You go in there and you look and you see iPhone. You then add iPhone as a negative keyword, which is as simple as just putting a minus sign in front of the keyword. So minus sign iPhone, no spaces, and that will do a negative match keyword. So you got to watch out for that stuff. So when you first launch a campaign,
rate and your cost and everything.
Yep, exactly. So the main thing there is that when you get set up, right, you got to have the measuring in place, right, in terms of being set up for success. So what does that mean in terms of Google AdWords? That means phone call tracking, okay? So how many phone calls are being generated from these ads that you're showing? Then you've got AdWords conversion tracking, okay? So if you have a form submission, or if it's an e-commerce site or whatever, that when somebody places a sale, fills out an opt-in form, whatever the case may be, that they go to a thank you page or a confirmation page, and that you have that AdWords conversion tracking code on that page. Okay? To take that to the next level, you can then even track the value of that action, right? Because all actions aren't necessarily created equal. So a phone call could be worth $10 to me, where somebody filling out a form on the website could be worth $20, right? Or vice versa, right? So Google has an area for the value for those actions. So the first thing is the measuring, right? Getting the measuring set up, AdWords conversion tracking, phone call tracking, going into Google Analytics, linking the Google Analytics account with the Google AdWords account. And then also setting up goals in Google Analytics so you can see that information in there as well. The second thing is analyzing. So you launch a campaign. I talked about kind of like building the campaign, right, that it needs to resemble a tree. But in terms of then the next part is then analyzing and optimizing. So when you launch a campaign, the very first week is very important, right? You're starting to begin your history on that account, and if you want to dive in quickly and see. Hang on one second. Let me just change this. Sorry about that. It's getting a weird. Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
That's weird. All right, there we go. Sorry.
So analyzing the account.
Yep. So analyzing the account. What you need to do is check your click-through rate. Find keywords or ads that have a low click-through rate and figure out why. Is it targeted? Is it relevant? Are there keywords that you need to add as negatives that are going to help that? Okay, where I'm showing my ad is being shown for all these non-relevant keywords, and that's why my click-through rate's very low. Okay, but you have to make sure that that click-through rate is decent. So in terms of figuring out like, well, what's a decent click-through rate? It should be probably above 1 or 2%. But in the keyword planner, you can see like what Google estimates the click-through rate should be for certain keywords. That, and then just monitoring your split test. You always want to create 2 ads at least and split test those ads. But the main thing is that you need to go in and check in on those and make sure that something that's not performing very well doesn't continue to run. I mean, I've gone in and looked at accounts where they did a good job of setting up the split tests, but they just let the loser continue to run. You got a winner and you got a loser, and that loser's been running for months. And literally now you have all the data, and you can look and say, we would have had double the sales if we just turned this one ad off, because we had a clear winner and we let the loser run. In terms of ads, you want to have at least 2 ads so that you're split testing. And you want to have your ad rotation, which is set at the campaign level, to rotate evenly. By default, Google sets it to optimize for clicks. And what they will do is it will be optimized for click-through rate. Now, sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing in the first week, because the click-through is a conversion to Google. And the click-through is what is important to increasing your quality score, right? So Google gets paid every time somebody clicks. So that's a conversion to them. And that's why the click-through is so important. But when you begin, you want to set it to rotate evenly. Check the ads for the conversion rate as well as then the click-through rate. And if, let's say, you have one ad that has a 10% conversion rate, and you have another ad that has a 11% conversion rate, but the ad with 11% conversion rate has a 1% click-through rate, the ad with the 10% conversion rate has a 2% click-through rate. The one with the 2% click-through rate is the one that you want to go with, because the conversion rate's only a small difference, and that 2% is not only going to get you double the traffic, but then it's also going to increase your quality score, which is going to ultimately lower your cost per click. In terms of getting started, starting small. Also, too, trying to focus on the buyer keywords, right? So our keywords that we call with high commercial intent. So, what are the most relevant keywords? Like sometimes, and this generally happens when like a business owner is trying to set this up on their own, and they're a dentist, and they put in a keyword of like teeth or something like that, right? Like that's like way too broad.
Compared to like Invisalign in Orlando, Florida.
Exactly. Maybe Budweiser can pay for traffic when somebody just searches on beer. Okay. I've been doing a bunch of stuff for our Wi-Fi network here. And there's these things called cantenas, and then there's also this thing where people take a beer can and cut it and put it on their wireless antennas, and it boosts the signal. And so I was searching on beer can antenna and things of that nature, and I'm seeing ads for Budweiser, right? So, Budweiser has the budget, like, oh, anything beer, we want to show up, right? Same thing too, like I did some work for a drug rehab facility, and they were literally showing up, and to the tune of they spent like $30,000 when someone just searched on alcohol. Like, that's it, only alcohol. So that's way too broad. You know what I mean? You want to focus on Invisalign, Orlando, Florida. Yeah, so and generally call that, longer tail, but, only focus on, several keywords at a time, and, try to start off with some good keywords that you feel confident are very relevant and should work. Make sure that you have a targeted ad to those, and let those run, and make sure that you get a good quality score and a good click-through rate. A good quality score, you should be hopefully around like 7 or above. Okay, that's kind of the benchmark. If you're at a 7, like you're doing okay, you're doing good. Anything above 7 is really just gravy. Anything below 7, like, you need to work on that to try to get it up to a 7. But start with fewer keywords and have targeted ads. Have several ad groups, and make sure that you're getting a good click-through rate. Also, too, make sure that your quality score is a 7 or above. Once those keywords reach that status, then start adding more keywords. And only add what you can handle, right? Don't add 1,000 ads if you can't manage 1,000 ads. Those are some good tips in terms of optimizing. So we talked about analyzing. The dimensions tab is great for analyzing. Also, too, the segments are great for analyzing. You can easily go in, if somebody has broad match set up, you can easily go in and see with the segments how the keywords are performing if they were exact, phrase, and broad, when they only have broad. So segments, dimensions, those are great for analyzing. In terms of optimizing, pausing the losers of the split tests, looking for opportunities to negative match keywords, and just staying on it. Like, it's not set and forget. Like, that's the main thing. You want to continue to split test your ads. Also, too, when you're split testing your ads, try only split testing one element at a time. So the elements of an ad, I call it like the anatomy of an ad. You've got the headline. You've got 25 characters. You've got description line 1. You've got 35 characters. You've got description line 2, 35 characters. You've got the display URL, and you've got the destination URL, which is the destination URL is, in essence, the landing page. Okay? So those are the different elements, the anatomy of an ad, and what you want to do is change one element at a time. Usually the headline tends to have the biggest impact. Okay? So have 2 ads, have the same description 1, have the same description 2, same display URL, and change the headline, and see how that affects the ad. Okay? And but the good thing is that when you only change one element at a time, you know definitively that it was this headline that worked. If you change the headline, you change the description, description 2, the display URL, it's like, well, what worked? Was it the headline? Are there things working against each other where, like, oh, well, description line 1 and 2 from ad A were actually better, but headline in ad B was so strong that, you know what I mean, it was still above, but they're counteracting. So split test one thing at a time, and then just, get in, analyze it, and optimize. That it's not set and forget. When you get started at first, that first week is crucial. Right, you got to get started on the right foot. Generally, what we'll do is target positions 1 through 3 when we first get started, and sometimes we'll kind of boost our bids in that first week just to make sure that we're coming up in those positions, that we're getting data. But then you got to act upon it. You got to do stuff with it. So I feel like those are kind of some of the biggest things to getting started with AdWords. As well as then optimizing.
Do you have a rule of thumb for, because obviously headlines are the biggest factor, so do you have a rule of thumb for how many headlines you'd like to test, or is it more of just you're looking for a certain kind of click-through rate?
So it really depends upon the volume that you're seeing. So I have keywords that where like there's certain keywords that it's like it's one word and it's the biggest keyword in this industry. Okay? And so for those keywords where I'm getting a lot of traffic, I'm getting a lot of impressions, that I may try 5 different headlines. Okay? But if the volume's not there, if I'm only getting 1,000 impressions for the entire month, then maybe just 2 ads. So that's really what you have to gauge it on, the volume that you're getting through that ad group.
And I'm going to assume no, because it's not interruption marketing seems to be plagued by this more. But what point does ad fatigue set in, and what point does ad fatigue factor into Google AdWords?
Yeah, so basically what we see is that this is an ever-changing thing, right? And one landing page might work best for one keyword and not work best for another keyword. And so everything has to be tested. And that just because something worked in the past doesn't mean it's going to work in the future. Because and it actually shouldn't if your competitors are doing their job, right? Because just like let's say you get competitors that where they put their ad in, it's the same ad all the time, right? Because they found that winner for them. But then me and a bunch of other competitors, we're constantly trying to claw our way to the top, and so I'm constantly doing new ads, new ads, new ads to eventually where hopefully I find a winner that beats them, right? And that then I overtake them. So it's important to to not just think that, hey, because this worked a month ago or 2 months ago, that it's going to work best today, and then also that with like ad fatigue and banner blindness and things of that nature, right? We see this a lot in for like CPA offers, right? So you get some offer, and that's basically kind of what it was in back when I talked about doing the anti-aging on the MySpace. So basically, I was running on the display network. I was running on MySpace. I was running on Plenty of Fish. The gay community is very big on the anti-aging, and so I found some like gay forums, and I mean literally just. Some of these I found with analyzing the different sites that I was showing up on in the display network. Yeah. So where I'd see like, oh, look, I got 3 conversions, but I only had 300 impressions, on this particular site, and then what you do is you add that specific site as a managed placement. And then you increase the bid on that, right? So what I did was I identified some of these sites, and I mean, man, when I first set it up, like we just literally like crushed it, okay? But then over time, like with the ad fatigue, like you're talking about, that okay, well, now the people that are coming back to the site, like the most engaged users, they've been seeing this ad, and maybe they clicked it already. And so then the effectiveness starts to wear down, and then that's where then it's like, okay, how do we change the offer? How do we change the ad? What can we do to try to mix some things up so that they don't feel like, oh yeah, this is the same thing or whatever. What's the different spin? But yeah, by all means, I mean that definitely happens.
Now to shift gears a bit and kind of focus on trends. So obviously Google AdWords has been around for a very long time, and Facebook advertising is still fairly new. Have you seen any trends? Have you noticed trends? I mean, we've talked about Facebook, and it's been a very popular subject. Facebook organic reach is not what it used to.
Yep.
It has dwindled and died down, and it's really affected a lot of strategies, blog strategies, fan page strategies, brand strategies, because they're just not getting the reach and the numbers that they used to. And obviously it's hurt a lot of them because you put a lot of time and you invested a lot of time into building these fans and maybe even building a community on Facebook, and now you're just not getting the numbers. So I wonder how other kind of changes of maybe that Google AdWords has been through trends.
Yep.
We're also starting to see on Facebook. Another example I would have is it seems like Facebook's steering a little bit more towards their own compliancy, and Google's known for being very strict, and it seems like Facebook's getting a bit stricter.
Yep. Yeah, these are very interesting points.
What from the history you've seen, because you've been around for a while, and you've spent a lot of money with Google, and you've spent, $150,000 is nothing to shake a leg at. You've spent that with Facebook, so you've seen enough from both of these. So I'm wondering what you've learned from these changes.
Yeah.
In history.
High level. So high level, Google and Facebook, as well as then Tumblr, Twitter, all these other sites that, I guess it was kind of like something in the .com where it was the goal was like build something that a lot of people come to, that you get a lot of eyeballs on. But exactly how you monetize that wasn't even really thought about so much. Okay, so it's like, and to be honest, when I first got started, I was ignorant to the fact of just ads and like, well, why would you want to have a free search engine? Why would you want to have millions of dollars in servers for a free search engine, right? Because I was ignorant to it when I first got started. But that it's basically kind of the thing has been like, you build this thing that's not monetized, and if enough people start using it, that then you figure out how to monetize it later. Okay. And for example, with Facebook, where a lot of us have probably seen the movie The Social Network, where like Mark Zuckerberg was like, no ads, no ads, no ads, right? He didn't want any ads, right? He felt like it just diminished the site and that people didn't like ads, and so people wouldn't come back to the site if it had ads. But basically, the main thing is that what we are seeing and what we will continue to see is that more and more will be pushed towards paid. Okay, so start with Facebook, right? When Facebook first came out, it was free and there were no ads. They monetized it with some weird ads or something, and but it was free. They didn't really have much, but now of course they're a public company, so they have shareholders to answer to. Right, that's really the main thing is that when you're a private company, yeah, you can just do whatever you want, but when you're a public company, you've got to have those earnings reports and you've got shareholders and investors to answer to, right? So you can't just say, well, we don't want any ads. So they're public companies, so they have to start generating revenue, and so what we'll continue to see is that more and more things will be paid. So another thing that's come out recently, staying on with Facebook for now, is that I've noticed that getting ads approved seems much easier now than it was several months ago. So, and I think a big reason for that is that they probably said like, look, these ads are helping our bottom line, and we've got these earnings reports coming up soon, so just approve everything. Right? I'm not saying that they're necessarily approving everything, but that I've seen they've gotten very lax. I think we've all seen it where before, if you had an arrow in your ad, it would be disapproved. If you had too much text in your ad, it would be disapproved. All these different things. I mean, I've seen ads that I don't even know how they got approved, where it was like, nearly like a naked chick on there, right? And then just because I was curious to see like, what's this going to, that like, I mean, it's essentially sending people to, some sort of adult dating website. And it's like, how is this getting approved? Naturally, people have talked about submitting ads in the middle of the night to, where it's hitting the India team or whatever to get ads approved more. But I'm seeing that ad approval rate, from what I see, has gone up for Facebook, and that's because they want to make more money. Okay? They have those earnings reports coming up.
Which goes back to your golden rules.
Exactly. So, The other thing is that what you had just mentioned is that we're seeing this trend where Facebook pages are not getting the reach that that they once did get. So there's been a couple of viral videos that have gone out where people have in the past they made posts and 10,000 people saw the ad or post rather, and where now they're making a post and only 1,000 people see the post. And actually, speaking into that, I actually did my own. I'm just pulling up my own little test. It's not a perfect test, but it's something to go off of. And let's see here. So I have a Facebook fan page, and actually too, I want to preface this with that. From what I've seen, that a lot of the where you're not getting the reach that you once did could be more specifically posts that have links, whereas posts with just images and text and those things, right, where there's nowhere to go from there, but that Facebook may be figuring out a way to, if you're linking off to, let's say, Teespring, or you're linking off to some sort of Amazon or whatever, some sort of commerce site, that they maybe have figured out a way to kind of know that and to reduce the reach.
Well, I think the answer there too is that you're leveraging a free means to get people off the site, right? So if I'm distributing content, so if it is, as you said, a photo or a text post, I'm going to consume that content on Facebook, and that, I'm going to read that text post, I'm going to look at that photo, and I'm going to keep scrolling down and stay in Facebook. Now, if it is a link, you're trying to get that person off of Facebook, and as I repeat, you're using a free means. Now, when you're doing paid to play, it's fine because they're getting their money. So
right.
They either want to keep the user and keep the time, or they want to get their money. So that makes a lot of sense, and I didn't quite connect that before. But if you want to get them off Facebook, almost you're going to have to pay for it, and that kind of seems like the answer a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I think too, like something that speaks into that, and I think that was a great summary, is how people have reported that even when you're doing paid ads, but driving them to a Facebook fan page, where maybe you're doing some custom HTML on there, that we've seen that sometimes the cost per click is a little bit less, right? Because Facebook still has an opportunity for that person, because they're still on Facebook, to click one of those ads, or even just the impressions of the ads, and they're able to continue to make money.
Well, that's actually it's interesting you bring that up, because I talked with Kevin Davis a bit about that, because that was something that I always had. I wasn't quite sure the notion, because if you use a tab, then you're within Facebook. So some people speculate that it was cheaper. Some people said it wasn't. And the problem with the tabs is that there were still the ads on the tabs, but now I think they've changed it so there's no longer ads on the tabs. But a lot of people have also said that from kind of a conversion standpoint, getting them off Facebook and having your own lander converts that much better, that regardless of the reduced cost per click or the other factors that play into it, you still end up doing typically better taking them off.
Yeah,
but it's one of those things where you do kind of have to test.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly it. Is you got to test everything, and I've heard about those reports as well, where conversion rate's better off of Facebook. You got to test it. It all depends on what it is, what's the offer, how does it look, all that stuff, and that's why everything just has to be tested.
That's something. I mean, you made that great point earlier about the click-through rate versus conversion, and it's kind of a similar thing with the cost per click. Is that you need to remember that it's about the cost per action, whether you're getting a lead, and the cost per conversion. So if you're getting a lead, you're getting a sale, and what those numbers end up looking like, because the tab might be a lot cheaper, but conversion-wise, it might cost you 3 times as much to get the lead. So
yeah.
Then you're focusing on the wrong metrics.
Exactly. It's all about the action. If you don't have actions properly measured, then you are looking at clicks and click-through rate and things like that. But yeah, ultimately, it's that end result that you're trying to achieve. In terms of a test, I ran a little test on one of my Facebook pages. It's not a perfect test, there's different variables that you could say could come into play. I wanted to just kind of test this theory about the reduced reach. And I'll have to try another one with a link. I'll have to find one of my old posts that has a link and test that as well, because I do think that has some merit. But this was basically an image post with some text. And in June of 2012, my Facebook fan page had 46,000 fans, and that particular post reached 24,000 people roughly. Okay, so it was like 52% of my entire fan base was reached with this post. I got 2,000 likes, 84 comments, and 1,000 shares. So that was it was a pretty good post. And I just posted the same post, the same image, to the fan page yesterday. It's run just a little over 24 hours, and my fan page today has 126,000 fans, and so far that post has reached 38,000 people, which is about 30%. So far it's had 700 shares, 700 likes, and 50 comments. That's all within the past 24 hours. So, 30% reach. I mean, naturally the reach increases when you have more likes or shares or things, and there is some of that going on there. But just from that same post, it was the same thing I posted in June of 2012. I reposted it, whereas I have 126,000 fans now versus 46,000 fans then, and the reach was roughly 50%, whereas now what I'm seeing is 30%. Naturally, there's a lot of things that could come into play there. Well, was I posting more frequently in June of 2012 than I am now? That could be a factor. A lot of different things could be factors, but I just kind of did that for my own sake, and that's how that shook up. So anyways, back to that main thing, right, is that it's all moving towards paid, because that's how, not to say that the free stuff's ever going to go away, but this is a perfect example that everyone's talking about where it's, hey, the free isn't working as good as it used to, right? Same thing, too, with Google Organic, right? Moving on to Google. The organic section used to be very big on the page. If you looked at like the actual screen real estate that the organic section held, was a lot more as a percentage of the entire page than it is now. We've seen things where sometimes, especially with the different, the universal search, you've got the map listings, the shopping results, all these different things that come into play. Sometimes where it used to be, if you were in the top 10, that like probably 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time, if you were in the top 10, you would be on the first page of Google. Whereas now, sometimes you have to be in the top 4 to be on the first page of Google, and organically, right? And you've got, okay, well, our map listings consider organic, whatever, these different things, but that the free isn't as good as it used to be, and the reason for that is that, and we've heard Google over the years talk about that, they weren't going to do this and that, and slowly but surely they do, and that the organic is much smaller now, and also too the organic, with all the different updates that have come out, that I talked about of reasons that moving target, the more difficult to get into the free listings it is, the more inclined people are going to move to the paid. So this is something that we'll continue to see, right? Like Tumblr, Twitter, all these things are moving towards paid and finding ways to monetize. So once again, it's not to say like, oh, the SEO is dead and there's no value there and that's going to go away completely, but that we should expect to see more and more things get monetized and more of the paid become more obvious on the site, more prevalent on the site, and and that's why for me, like AdWords, Facebook, Bing ads, and some of the newer stuff like the Twitter, the retargeting. I heard that I think actually you said it right that Discus was going to be doing some paid comments. That I just say, hey, like don't just focus only on the free stuff. Get into doing some of the paid stuff because more and more will become paid, and that the earlier that you get started with it now, the less new stuff it will be in the future, right? So like if a couple years from now, like okay, you got to learn Twitter, you got to learn AdWords, you got to learn Bing, you got to learn Facebook. Oh, now Google Glass, there's a way to monetize that, and there's ways for ads with augmented reality. Now there's just, it just keeps getting bigger. The other thing, too, that I wanted to mention is YouTube ads. That's a great area in terms of the true view and, like, the pre-roll, the in-stream ads that you can get some amazing results there because the inventory is very high and the demand isn't. So you can get penny clicks there. You can also get penny clicks with mobile advertising on mobile apps. So real quick too. So I mean that's another thing to try is that we're working with a company that has a patent for magnetic guitar picks. Well, I so happen to find a mobile app that allows you to tune your guitar. So literally, you have this app open. You have your guitar in your hand. You have your pick in your hand. And now you're looking at this app that's helping you tune your guitar, and there's an ad that's related to these things that are in your hands right now. We were getting penny clicks on that. It didn't work for that client because their website wasn't mobile optimized. So we just basically said like, hey, we proved that we can drive a ton of cheap traffic that's very targeted and relevant. However, we need a better mobile presence, a mobile optimized website. And so until we get that, like, it's just not worth running.
I think with paid too is the big problem that people struggle with paid is it forces you to put your money where your mouth is, and it really will show the flaws and the inefficiencies of your business model or your funnel. Because if you can't figure out, what your average cost per lead is, your average cost per sale, and some of these other numbers, and you can't figure out a way to set it up so that your site is making, can really just have a specific number and know, all right, as long as we hit this number, we're going to be profitable. There's probably something missing within your site. I mean, and that was a great example. You were able to deliver these guys great traffic, but they weren't mobile optimized. And before, who knows how much traffic and sales they were missing out on because they weren't mobile optimized. And it really just, I feel like it almost takes a spotlight and just focuses it on whatever part of your business that isn't performing well enough. So it might be your landing page, it might be your follow-up sequence, it might be your average cost per sale. It might just be that your site isn't mobile optimized.
Yep. Or your load time.
Yeah.
Yeah, your site's taking a long time to load. Or your site loads great in Florida and doesn't load well at all in California because wherever your server is located. But yeah, I think that's a great point, is that it kind of puts that microscope on everything that you're doing, and because you're actively putting dollars out and looking at what's coming in, it's much faster, and so you've got to make those changes fast, and you've got to realize what's happening fast, and that's why like that first week when you, I mean honestly, for whether it's Facebook or Google, that right when you launch that campaign. And as soon as you start getting some impressions and some clicks, you got to dive into those stats and look at what's happening. Look at your split tests of your ads, and and start trimming and tweaking and doing different things. So, but one of the cool things too is like with Facebook and Google that they both rely heavily on click-through rate because for the most part it's a conversion for both of them, and so. Click-through rate, I mean, you could say, hey, like, CPA is really king, but, that the CTR is, I guess you could say is maybe queen. So, at least in terms of getting a lot of traffic for cheap.
And now, as far as retargeting, if you could just touch on it briefly, I know a big part of it does depend upon where your market is. So, for example, if most of your market's on YouTube, then obviously YouTube retargeting is going to do very well. You might do well with Google Display. I know with data reach, for example, we did very well with Facebook.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so retargeting. So, real quick, for those that might not know what it is, if you've probably seen it in action, but maybe didn't really realize it, that if you've ever been to a website and you left the website, and then next thing you know, you were seeing ads on Facebook and banner ads throughout the internet for that website, 9 times out of 10, that was probably retargeting. Google calls it remarketing, and so now you know what it is. In terms of how to use it, so we prefer using Perfect Audience, which will allow you to retarget on not only Facebook, but then also the internet, and also on Twitter. Okay, so you can do that like kind of a one-stop shop with Perfect Audience. And the cool thing is that they make it really easy, where they basically just give you this code that you put on your website, and then that's how they're able to do this. You can put the code on different pages, and but a big thing is that you create different lists. And so like kind of an industry term is like a burn pixel. And basically kind of what that is that like let's say you're bringing people to a site, or people come to a site, and then you're retargeting them to come back to the website to make a sale. Well, once they make a sale, either you want to change your advertising, or you don't want to advertise to them at all for some period, given time, at least not for the thing that they were looking at, right? So, so what you do is when they've converted, and you exclude that list from your primary list. But Perfect Audience allows you to get on, do it through the web, Facebook, and Twitter, and also too, then Google has what they call it remarketing, and that's just on the Google display network. So that's all the people that have partnered with Google that have the banner ads. The difference is that sites like, for example, AOL are what are called search partners. And so basically, Google is serving up the results for AOL. So it's like essentially like powered by Google. Whereas there's other websites that have like what's called Google AdSense on the website, and so they actually share in the revenue that Google makes when somebody clicks on the ads or just the impressions. And so all those sites, I think, make up something like 80% of the internet, and so it allows you very great reach. And just kind of talking more about retargeting, you're absolutely right. So we did it for our data reach launch. Basically, everyone that hit the page got tagged, and then we kept showing them ads, until they basically bought. The cool thing is that for our affiliates, we used naked links. So if the affiliate that drove the traffic ultimately got the credit for the sale that we brought back through the remarketing. So we spent something like $1,500, and it drove approximately $60,000 in sales. So the CPA was ridiculous on that. Also, too, the cost per click tends to be very low when you're doing the retargeting. And we're using Perfect Audience right now, but we're also using the website custom audiences with Facebook, WCA. I know that you just put out a post about that, and the WCA is a little bit more cumbersome to set up. However, we're seeing that the cost per click is less because you don't have a third party that's marking the cost up for them to make their margin. So, some other things real quick to talk about with remarketing in terms of some tips and tricks is create different lists. In terms of like who to tag, I say tag everybody, but then create different lists. So with like perfect audience, you can say anyone that hit this page. So you've got anyone that hit any page, right? That's like your main list. Then people that hit maybe the order form page, right? Okay, then we've got people that hit the thank you page or the confirmation page that we know ordered. So that's going to be like our burn pixel, okay? But some other things that you can do too is you can kind of change your ads over time. So what you're showing over, let's say, a 7-day period could change over then 7 to 14 days. So maybe you're trying to get them to come back, and it's just a, hey, come back, we want you, whatever, right? Or then, like, after 7 days, like, the chances of them coming back are getting less and less. Now maybe you offer them some sort of a discount, or buy one, get one free, or whatever. You just strengthen that offer to do whatever you can to bribe them, whatever, to get them to come back. We did this with a fishing lodge, where this fishing lodge that charges thousands of dollars to take people out on fishing excursions, basically, in Panama, that there was a form on the website for more information, okay? And if people came to the website and didn't fill out that form, we then started retargeting them with banners that said, win a free trip. Something that's very important with retargeting as well is that those banners need to be branded for that original site that they had come in on, right? Because otherwise, you're going to just be like every other banner ad. That they need to know, like, oh, yeah, here's the name of that site that I was on, so it kind of makes that connection. People are more likely to do business with brands that they've recognized or seen before over brands that they haven't seen before. I don't know the exact study on that, but you know, they did a study, and you know, things that brands that you've seen.
Data just trusts you.
Yeah.
But it makes a lot of sense. If you've seen something before, you're a lot more likely to purchase from it.
Yeah.
And you're not really using the full benefit of retargeting if you're not kind of reminding them, hey, you've seen us before. It's us again. Check us out.
Yeah, exactly. So that fishing lodge, I mean, basically, November is usually out of season for them, and it just so happened to end up being like their busiest month ever out of season because of remarketing. And basically, it was that win a free trip. So people had visited the site. We drove them back. That win a free trip page was just a form that they then filled out. And you know, ultimately, that it led to not just more opt-ins and leads. It led to more sales.
And that's a very cool reference too, because I just did on the Friday recap #2. I did a post about a case study, and it was a candle company. And they basically did a 7-day giveaway, and they generated around $15K in new revenue and I think 17,000 new leads, plus shares, likes, comments, fans, all that. But I mean, the important thing was they generated the revenue.
Yep, exactly.
And especially with that lodge too, it becomes interesting because the win a free trip, can feed into the social media aspect because now you have some more better content to post. That's really awesome to hear that they did, their best month in what was usually their worst month.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and so I mean, the other thing too is with events, remarketing, retargeting is extremely effective because you want to remind them of this event coming up, especially if it's the type of event where they don't necessarily go on pre-sale. Like there's a raceway out here near us, and Palm Beach International Raceway, and you'll see a billboard for an event. But like that's kind of the only way that you really know if there's something going on out there. Where if they were constantly remarketing for these different events, hey, this weekend, we got the top fuel dragsters, whatever. That it's reminding the people to get out there and come to the event. But then also too, when you do the ticket sales online, it's extremely effective. And the other thing is just in terms of a branding play, that people just really go crazy over your brand because they think like, man, I'm seeing you everywhere. You guys must be spending like $1 million a day in advertising because I see you everywhere. And it's just retargeting.
I always thought that about New Relic, and I think it was because I was still very virgin to remarketing because I was like, man, I see these guys everywhere.
Yeah.
But part of the reason too was I saw them on Facebook ads, and they were one of the companies that had they bought out a lot of subreddits, and I hadn't seen many companies do that. So that combined with their remarketing efforts, I was like, man, these guys are really everywhere. And then I did my research and I found out that they're a billion-dollar company about to have an IPO this year. So there's your answer.
Yeah, I mean the main thing with remarketing, whether it's perfect audience, WCA, now I say hedge your bets. Set up multiple pixels. So one from maybe do one from Google, one from Facebook, one from perfect audience, so that if Google comes along one day and says like oh, we don't like you for some reason, that you all your eggs weren't in one basket, right? But the main thing is like we call it the invisible list. Okay, because it's like an email list, but it's like invisible. It's you're creating an audience to target, and the main thing is just start building your invisible list today, and then also work on segmenting that list. So don't just have one list and like it's everyone. I mean, at a minimum, everyone that visits your website, and then everyone that converts on your website, so that you can exclude those people that have converted. That's a minimum. But then what you want to do is like something that we're doing on Traffic and Growth blog is we've got everyone that has visited the website, but then because we know all the people that have visited specific posts on that website, that we can target people for posts that they haven't seen yet. So come to the site, like here's something that you haven't seen yet, and once they click on that link and visit that page, we now know that they're on that audience for that particular post, and we know to exclude them, and now we show them something else. So you got to segment your list that way.
Gotcha. Well, thanks a lot, Ben, for coming on today. You definitely dropped a lot of knowledge. I really liked some of the contract and client stuff, because that's the kind of thing that gets overlooked, and especially for some people that are just starting out, or maybe you've gotten 2 clients, and now you're about to land that big contract. And that 10% thing, that's a lot of money that you missed out on, and someone else could end up missing out on. So appreciate that.
Yep, definitely. I mean, one last thing I wanted to add is I thought about when I was talking about outbound marketing, that I kind of then started on something else, and I just kind of wanted to come back to that real quick. Is that especially for the pay-per-click management and things of that nature, paid advertising. That what we're doing for outbound marketing for that, which has been extremely successful, is we're mixing the two things that I talked about today. Is that one is that audit, right? That when I was doing the SEO and I dug into the stats for the Ink and Toner site that I wasn't even managing, that's what helped me to learn the power of an audit. Okay, so that's something that we do now, and so another thing that we used to do in the past is that we would look for outbound marketing is we would look in the phone book, and we would look in the coupon magazines and things like that to figure out who is spending the money on advertising, and then let's go and look at their website. Let's go. Do they have a mobile website? Do they have a social media presence? What's their SEO like? All these different things. And that we would then approach them, whether it be direct mail or a phone call, with, hey, we see that your website sucks, and we do websites, right? But we started with those people because we knew that they were trying to do something, and just like how you said, like how the paid advertising puts that microscope, that like, hey, these guys are out spending money, they're trying to build their business, and they've got things that are hindering them from building their business, and so let us help you with that stuff. And so that's what we do with the paid advertisers. So whereas back then it was the phone book and the coupon magazines and things like that. Whereas now what we do is we look at businesses' estimated ad spend in Google. Okay, so there are tools out there that will give you estimates. SpyFu is one, SEMrush is another. We also have our PPC Prospector tool that pulls in these stats. But basically what it does is you can type in a keyword, and it will show you who's advertising for that keyword and an approximation of what they're spending per month as a whole, not just with that one keyword, but okay, this business is spending 100 grand a month with Google AdWords, roughly, right? They're just estimates. But what we do now is we go and we find those clients that are spending big money, and then we run what's called a mini audit, okay? And basically the mini audit allows us to find things that we can find without having access to their Google AdWords account, okay? So having access to the Google AdWords account is definitely the best thing to have. You can dive in and see everything, but the mini audit process looks at things like, do their ads have a call to action, right? That a call to action usually improves the click-through rate. Does their website have a privacy policy? Are they advertising to mobile devices, but they don't have a mobile optimized website? What else? There's different things, but those are a couple. There's about a dozen things that we look at, but it's basically, what things can we see, just like with the coupon magazine, right, when we're going that route with the phone book. Okay, we know they're spending money. Now let's look at their website. Now let's look at their social media presence. Now let's look at, you could even do it with reputation. Like, okay, what's their reputation like online? And that if you know that they're spending money, that you have a much better chance because they're a little bit more savvy, they're spending money, and it's, hey, you've got things that are hindering your business from growing. You obviously understand that it's important to try to grow your business through marketing and advertising, and we found these things that are hindering your success, and we'd like to sit down and meet with you and talk about them. And that, then of course the goal is that then we do the fixing, right? So, oh, you need a mobile optimized website, and that hopefully that they're like, oh, well, where do I get that? How much is it? Things like that, and then we help them become successful. So instead of the phone books, coupon magazines, we'll still look at those and use those because, hey, if we know that a full page ad is $30,000, that could be a good prospect to go after. But what we do now primarily is look at their estimated ad spend through SEMrush or SpyFu, go after those guys, find the ones that that we can see have issues, and and then go and offer to help them fix the problems, and and just kind of keep going deeper and deeper with those. So I just wanted to kind of circle back around on that because I kind of went off on a tangent on the outbound, and that's basically what we do for the outbound. We identify those businesses spending money with Google through SEMrush or SpyFu. We then run them through the mini audit process. So, okay, now we've got 10 guys spending 100 grand. Show me the ones that we can see have that we have the most opportunity with, right? Because like if you see like, oh man, they might have an agency running their account because they're doing everything right, then chances are, like instead go to the person that's doing everything wrong and go in there and kind of be the the savior, to help them, fix all these problems and help their business be successful and help put some money in your pocket. So that's what we do for outbound. That's worked for us. It's free. It's no obligation, and once again, we're coming in trying to help them. But that we hope that by doing that, that then hopefully that we'll be making the changes ourselves.
And that's reminds me of kind of the 1-hour consultation call, and that is a similar model of you find some of the flaws in their businesses, you kind of give them proposed solutions, and then you go, well, I can do these solutions for you if you'd like.
Exactly. The pitch for the mini audit is exactly like that consultative close. Like, here's all these things. Do you want some help?
Yeah.
And
it's a very soft close, but it can work extremely
well. Yeah, exactly. I mean, by all means, sometimes like, oh, well, we're working with another company, but we're not really very happy with them right now. So, yeah, give us a proposal. Or, yeah, I mean, literally, like, sometimes these people will be like, we've been praying for this for a long time. You've come at the right time. And, just to kind of leave you with a couple other nuggets, the 4 pillars that I call them to making a sale are trust, ability, proof, and price. Okay, so like how I talked about, where the only referrals that I've never been able to convert are the ones that are have a price that, well, they're expecting $500 and I'm at 3,000, right? But basically, do they trust you? And a lot of times, trust can sometimes, if price is an issue, trust can kind of trump everything else, right? The other thing is ability. Do they feel like you have the capabilities to do this job, right? Like, okay, you're a plumber and I need you to fix my toilet. So I feel like, you have the capabilities and I trust you because you're my neighbor or you're a friend of a friend or something like that, right? The other thing is proof. So, have you done this before or is this your first rodeo? And so that's where like case studies come into play for, like for example, I tend to, some of the verticals that I've worked in paid search, I don't want to say I stay in those verticals, but like I prefer those verticals because, ink and toner, like that's one, right? Where I'm like, hey, I built this business to 190,000 a month. I'm not doing that business anymore, but when I was doing that, literally like almost every competitor like tracked me down and like contacted me to try to get me to work on their site because we were just dominating. So it's like in SEO, your results are your proof, right? Those are your case studies, and then of course price, where if you can only afford $500 and I'm at 5,000, it doesn't matter if I trust you. It doesn't matter if I know you can do the job, and it doesn't matter if you've done it 100 times. If the price doesn't match, then then that's that. So so those are the four pillars to making a sale. And generally speaking, if you do those in that order, trust, ability, proof, price, you start building trust with them first. Then you've built trust. Okay, now you show them that you're capable of doing it and that it's not your first rodeo. If you've got case studies, that's great. And then of course, finding a price that that works as well. So.
Gotcha. And that sounds too. I know the price as someone's lead generation process becomes more matured. So say you're only getting 10 leads a month, but say for some reason you're getting 100 leads a month, you can use price as a way to filter out leads as well.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, just like for you guys, it doesn't matter how good friends you are with someone or who they are, or what they do. If they're thinking $500 and your price point's $3,000, that sale's just never going to happen.
Right. Yep.
And it can kind of, I don't want to say like a waste of time, but the reality is the sale isn't going to happen. So in a way, it is.
Yep.
All right, Ben. Well, thanks a lot for coming on.
Yep.
Really appreciate it. Dropped a lot of knowledge bombs.
Thanks a lot. Take care.